My name is Shaikh with Mira Business FM, and in the studio today we are going to discuss something very important which affects everyone, which is nutrition, food, and the economics around the affordability of managing meals, living healthy, and within your affordable budgets. And in the studio today we have Sophie. She's a registered nutritionist, or rather certified nutritionist. I'm messing it up a bit. And we finally have someone with real credentials in the house, regarding this important topic. And I hope you pay attention because Sophie has a background and the knowledge around the space. So let's talk to her.
Thank you for having me. Quick background, so thank you for a lovely introduction. I'm a nutritional therapist, as you said. So I've done a master's degree in nutritional therapy. I did that in the UK. But before that, my first degree was in pharmacology and the world of medication. So I feel like with both of them, I understand the importance and the place for medication when it's required, and there will always be a role for that in society. But then I added the nutritional dimension, I guess, to understand how we can help people that are taking medication to kind of get the most from that medication and perhaps help them to reduce the side effects. But also, can we help them before they need that medication? And are there things that we can do with their diet and their lifestyle to maybe alleviate symptoms that they would then have masked by just taking a pill? So I grew up in Australia, and that's kind of where I got my love for all things health and well-being for. I lived a lovely outdoor healthy lifestyle there. It really promotes that healthy culture. And from there I did a lot of my studying back in the UK. I lived in Dubai, here where we are, for a little bit, and then now I'm back here. So I've been back for a couple of years. Been working on some different projects, kind of trying to just suss out the well-being landscape out here. I think it's a very fast-moving, forward-thinking place. However, with that comes a lot of people who are out here trying to spread, perhaps, I don't know the political way to put it, but perhaps spreading advice that can, if it's put into the people with the wrong hands, it can be quite harmful. So it's important that we kind of have conversations like this to make sure that, people understand the basics rather than just what they're seeing on social media and all of these marketed products and stuff. So I feel very passionate about the education piece, and hence I'm delighted to be here to speak to you.
So going back to the starting little bit, is that what was the emotional trigger that you decided to enter this studying space? Because you're young at that time and you're thinking, why this? What was that? Was it a personal thing? Was it something happening? You saw something happening around you, and why did you step into this world?
It's a good question, and I get asked it a lot, and I wish there was a real defining moment that I could answer that with, but I don't think there was. I think my childhood being brought up in also a family that had always encouraged a healthy relationship with food. We ate well. There was a lot of balance there, but then also I think that Australia, I played a lot of competitive sport in Australia, and I think when you're playing, I played water polo to a high level. People always get confused with what that is. It does not involve horses. It's in a pool with a ball, and you're doing a lot of, it's a very high intensity exercise. So I think with that and playing sport to a high level comes a lot of, really needing to look after yourself, making sure that you're doing the recovery, the nutrition is right. And I think I wanted to learn as much of that I could to help my performance, essentially. So there was definitely something that came into it there. I think then when I did my pharmacology degree, I realized again that it was great to be able to offer these medications to people, but that there was still that missing piece of the puzzle, which is why are we giving people medication to mask symptoms that could have been avoided? So that, encouraged me to dive a bit deeper. The master's I did like part-time whilst I was working for a big medical device company. And I think the more I learned, the more I realized that there were things that in my life I could do better. And it is since then that I then had a couple of hormone-related concerns myself that's led me to dive deeper into it. But yeah, it's more about when you realize how little people know or how people are misled. I think it really makes me feel even more strongly about trying to help people just get a base level of education to make informed choices.
I mean, that's. I mean, all makes sense here. It all makes sense because there's always a grounding reason, and you just demonstrated that. Let's describe the problem. How bad is the problem, and what? Because people say bad, but how do you define bad? How bad is the problem on the ground? How bad is it in Dubai? And how would you say that even if a solution is offered, how easy is it, or rather how much dedication and consistency is required to achieve results? So let's first describe the seriousness of the problem so that whoever is listening understand that this is not just about taking some vitamins or just exercising, that this is a very serious matter. And if you keep ignoring it, horrible things will end up happening to you in a slow motion way.
Yeah, so I assume you're talking about general health. How bad is the problem? I think this is a massively loaded question. We could be here talking for hours. I think that part of the problem is the access to information and how easy it is to put wrong information out there, and how we're misled by big commercial organizations who are in it for different reasons, financially so most of the time. And I think aside, it comes with that is the fact that people aren't getting these basic levels of education in schooling and further education to enable them to identify that the information that they're being bombarded with perhaps isn't the most robust. So I think that overload of information where people are hearing so many different things. I mean, you only have to scroll through social media to see one post will be recommending something and the next post will be recommending something entirely contradictory, and it's overwhelm. And I think then, people just get into this real, I don't understand. There's too much out there. I'm just going to give up. And that's, I can understand why people feel that way. So I think, overwhelm of information and some of that not being factually correct is a big piece of the puzzle. I think the ease of access to perhaps foods that are not the most nutritious is always going to be challenging, because people deem it very easy to click on an app and order something straight away, and they don't really realize what is in that food. They haven't really been taught to think about it. So that the ease of access to foods that isn't great is definitely another problem. I think when it comes to supplementation, again, that probably links into what we've just discussed about just too many people out there trying to jump on the supplement bandwagon and with no real qualification or background. There's really few regulations when it comes to the supplement industry in comparison to the pharmaceutical or the medicine industries. Depending on the country, some more strict than others, but in many places it's actually very easy to get a supplement to the market and, sell it on Amazon. And you only need to scroll through Amazon and then somebody reviews it because they've been paid to review it. And you're then, you're caught in the trap because you've never been taught to look at something differently. So I think there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of good as well. There are people out there doing a lot of good. It's just there's a lot of noise, and it's hard to identify what is the right and what is the wrong.
If we go back to let's say the supplements is one part of it, and what about the whole foods part of it? What about the supermarket? You go to the basics, right? You go there and you start with something. Okay, I'm going to buy some things. How is it when you look at something and then someone a different economic, because we are Mira Business FM, so we have to tie a number to the problem. I think the number is the entire population, and then and as you go down the lower income stack, it gets worse for everyone.
Yeah.
So the delivery rider, for example, who's out in the sun, poor guy, he might be okay with taking more costs because he's more active and it's actually fueling and helping him, versus the guy like people like us who are mostly sitting all day, which would be a damage. And how can we help them economically speaking? That okay, how can we suggest to them, okay, if you're in this income bracket, I know it's challenging, and it's not even just challenging. You have a financial wall against you cannot cross because of the funds you have. What's the best they can do in a low cost, medium cost, or no cost way to buy better foods, and live a better life effectively?
Yeah. So a couple of tips. I think one of the key things there is, you walk into a supermarket and they're all in marketing and advertising. So they know what foods to put at what points of your journey through that supermarket. It's a very well thought out process. So I think you've got to go in it. I always say to people, don't go into a supermarket hungry, because that is the worst thing you can do. You end up with all sorts in your basket of things you don't want. But from an economical perspective, I would always say, like leading on to that previous point, have a plan, have a list, know what you're going in for, and try not to stray from that list too much, because you're then much more in control of what you're spending. I say that, if you're in a position to be able to order some food online, perhaps, you're ordering supermarket food. We're talking supermarkets. We're not talking about ordering takeaway style food at the moment. But always having that plan and really kind of saying to yourself, this is the budget that I have for my weekly shop, and then I know what I have to work with. So firstly, you've got that, you're not going to try and stray away from that list that you've got. I always say to people, I prefer to do it, on a Sunday. I actually set myself for the week. Okay, what recipes am I going to try and experiment with this week? The internet is full of recipes, which is the great thing. Cookbooks, everything. Find the recipes that appeal to you and write a shopping list and a weekly meal plan. I like to bulk cook, and I often recommend to people from a financial standpoint. It's a really, really convenient and economically safe way to do things. So, pick 3 recipes that you want to make in a week and get yourself a couple of, ideally glass containers, because I'm all for reducing the amount of plastic that we have in our lives, but something reusable ideally as well. And make yourself those 3 recipes. Maybe on a Sunday you say, right, I'm going to make these 2 recipes on a Sunday. You dedicate 2 hours and you bulk cook. And in terms of the ingredients, we are fortunate in some extent in Dubai, where we have access to ingredients that are, you can, your lentils, your chickpeas, beans, all of those are pretty economically sound. They're pretty cheap items, and you can make some wonderful foods from them. They've also got their nutritional properties, protein. So, and I always say to people to experiment. Try not to just resort to the same things. We want that diversity from a gut health perspective as well. It's super important. I say, trying to aim for 30 different plant-based foods a week. And it sounds crazy. People look at me and think, how am I ever going to do that? But that includes things like your spices. And we do have access to fantastic locally produced spices here in Dubai, and all of them have their own nutritional properties. So, we can experiment with 3 or 4 different spices in those recipes. You're already up to 8 to 10 of your variety in plants per week. I think buying any kind of tinned foods, the dried beans and legumes are cheaper. They do require some soaking, and they're a bit more of a laborious cooking process. But even the cooked ones, I think making them the basis of your meals is going to be great. And I think, dals, amazing stews, if you've got or are in a position to get something like a slow cooker, they're not crazy expensive slow cookers. You don't need to go for the top of the range. You just need something that you can turn on, chuck a load of beans into it, chuck some spices in, bit of broth type liquid, and put that on for a few hours. If you've got a day off in the week, perhaps put that on in the morning and cook for the people around you as well. I think that's a fantastic way to be economical in some senses. Team up with 3 or 4 of your workmates and say, look, I'll do 1 meal a week, you do 1 and you do 1, and then you kind of are getting that variety with the opportunity to kind of also enjoy that social aspect of sharing those recipes. So I think looking from a cost perspective, looking at those types of ingredients, having that list so that you're in control of what you're spending. I would say we talk about, the fresh fruits, the fruits and the vegetables. Here we've got the import costs, we've got a lot of fees that get put on, and I do agree that they are very expensive, but buying frozen fruits and vegetables is totally fine. From a nutritional perspective, you're not losing out, because most of the times these are actually even fresher because they're frozen at picking point almost. So they're not left for days. It's easier to buy frozen organic products because they've not had to have that pesticide treatment that's going to help them to last longer. So they can, I tend to buy organic products only when they're frozen. and the nutritional content is maintained in them. So I definitely, and you can throw them into your slow cooker again. You know, get a bag of mixed chopped veg from your local supermarket and throw that in. Frozen food, you know, the packaged pizzas and everything, we're not talking about them, but your frozen fruits and vegetables, absolutely no problems with them.
And this is a very cool point you raised, because we always heard frozen is bad for you and all of that. And segue to that is that what kind of canned foods are safe? I mean, there must be not everything can be bad for you. Like canned tuna in brine with salt, it's just water, because I do that myself. There's nothing going on inside it, and it's convenient. And its protein levels are so high that it's basically like after eggs, it just keeps me going all day. What other canned foods are okay-ish, or rather some are no? What would you say there?
So it's more to do with reading the label, I would say, in these, and getting foods that have as fewer ingredients on that label as possible. And it applies to anything really. But when we're talking canned food, you'll be amazed at some brands and what they're putting into these canned foods. So when you're looking at a product and you're thinking, this looks pretty much like a meal in a can, like that's probably something that you want to be avoiding. Anything that when you're reading it, it's got these sugars, it's got additives, anything that you're looking at and you're thinking, I don't even know what that is, or I can't pronounce that, that's probably something that you're going to want to avoid. But like the likes of your tuna, any fish in a can, I think is usually the fish in brine or, you know, a bit of salt water, no issues. But it's these thick kind of like sauces type things where you're much better just buying some tinned tomatoes and putting the tinned tomatoes in. Like, don't resort to your pasta sauces. Make it yourself. It's so much cheaper, it's so much easier, and it's much more fun. You can get the herbs, the spices, the base of the tomatoes in there without needing to get all of those extra things that they're loading in, because they have to preserve those items. They have to make sure that they're going to be fine in, you know, a year's time, because canned food has such a long shelf life. So I think just read the label, and, you know, more than 3 ingredients, don't take it. There's no need. You may as well be making that item yourself from scratch. The only thing we need to be a little careful of sometimes when we're talking tinned and canned food is there are chemicals in the cans that can leach into the foods. So as soon as that can's been opened, I would recommend pouring it out. If you're not using all of the product in there, put it into a different container, ideally glass, and keep that in the fridge, because you're kind of exposing that then to the air, and the insides of those containers can become contaminated. Tuna, I agree, is a great food. The thing we have to be a little careful about with tuna is the level of mercury, so metals. Tuna are very big fish in the sea, and unfortunately these days the sea is full of contaminated, you know, metals, plastics, anything that is entering there. And because these fish are so big, they've got a massive surface area and are very easily absorbing these metals. So I do tend to say to people, tuna is okay, but something that you probably want to reserve for once, twice a week maximum. Looking at your other fish, you know, the smaller the fish, actually, the better. So your sardines, anchovies, mackerel, all also full of very, very good fish oils. So those are your oily fish, though people usually turn their nose up at them. But those smaller fish are amazing from a nutritional perspective. If you can tolerate the taste of them, 100% go for it.
I mean, this is really good, where we're bringing in practical information for people. I think it'll help them a lot. Just moving on to something, what's not available in Dubai? I mean, we can buy pretty much anything here. Food-wise, did you notice anything in your travels that, okay, this is something very important, but somehow it's too expensive or not found many places? What is there something like that? Is there some item missing here?
It's a good question. I don't know whether I think you can find most things here, but the price points are often quite extreme. So to be honest, I struggle when it comes to, I don't use a lot of protein powders, but I do use it on a day where I feel like my protein maybe has lacked or been limited, or if I'm out and about and I want to make a quick smoothie and put some protein powder in. I think things like that, I find hard, and I have to import from other places, because the ones that we see here are typically full of, like we said, those additives, those extra ingredients. When you're thinking protein powder, you need to think, you know, ideally your organic where possible, from a grass-fed source, so the animal hasn't been fed anything artificial, unsweetened, and finding that here is just one thing that I find super tough. I think, like I said, your beans, your legumes, all super easy. I find it quite hard to get fresh fruit and vegetables at a reasonable price. Berries are a no-go in Dubai most of the time. They're so expensive. So I don't tend to have and they're so nutritional. So, I do buy frozen, like I said, where possible. I'm trying to think what else I would lack when I'm going. We do have some great supermarkets in Dubai. We're fortunate. I think there are classic kind of snack grab and go items that potentially sometimes are lacking. You can get them in the likes of your Spinneys and Waitrose, but again, the prices are quite extreme. So I think healthy snack items are probably lacking a lot of, and I think that is often where people fall short as well when they're just wanting something quick. And when you're at the supermarket and you're at the checkout and the things around you when you're about to pay are not nutritional, but you think, oh, that I fancy a bit of that. Or whilst they're, scanning through your items, you're adding things in, and that's when people tend to get caught up. There's nothing really nutritional in the snack market, I would say.
No, you're right about snacks, because I've personally given up on snacks because it was just so, like you said, the list is like 3 inches on the ingredients. And then I found a shortcut in the sense that I went with nuts.
Yeah,
that's
fantastic.
one. And then you get tired of nuts. Okay, you feel a little bit heavy. Then I found a shortcut using black cardamom, just as for snacking.
Black cardamom.
Black cardamom.
Okay.
And then because it's not sugary, it's not nothing. It just immediately makes you feel better. And even this might be odd for some people because anti-inflammatory, cloves are anti-inflammatory. And then I would just take for headaches. Sometimes you just in tea, you just put it there and just the seeds or you just chew on them a bit and just. So, but the most impact I felt, immediate impact, was with black cardamom. And they're cheaper apparently, by the way, than green. Because green is used in teas,
right?
But the better one nutritionally is the black one, and I find it, and it's a larger one as well. So snacking wise, this has become my profile, and even at home, I'm like just pushing this and give it to my family and everything.
Yeah, great.
And then because I said, okay, because if you think about it, the unfortunate summary is that most meats are contaminated on the chain.
Yeah.
I mean, considering tuna, that's one thing, or fish is one thing. Everything is effectively contaminated on some level.
Absolutely, yeah. So you're losing a battle for sure. But I think meat is, another thing that you're right, is harder to get here. That's good quality. Particularly
there's no
the
labeling
chicken,
system. Apparently, Abu Dhabi is coming up with some kind of labeling system for snacks. Yeah, and they're going to have a traffic light system.
I've seen that on some maybe imported items.
It came on the news. Abu Dhabi is going to come with it. I think, I forget, one South American nation has a very serious labeling system where they put black stickers on nasty stuff, which is like bad for you, which is like big dark stickers that this is terrible for you, which is how it should be.
Yeah, I agree.
And, since there is no kind of mechanism here, and that's why we're talking about it. It's very important, and I hope if someone is listening in the government, they will say we want.
I hope so. Yeah, I think labeling is super important because it goes back to the marketing thing, doesn't it? You see a nice label, and you're so 2 items that look differently but are exactly the same. You're going to have a preference of one over the other. So, labeling, they have that they're doing it quite well in the UK. But it would be great if they're more on it here, because I think that's part of the education piece, isn't it? Just giving something people can easily look for. But I always say, just turn the packet over. Next time you're buying something, turn it over, read those ingredients. Can you actually pronounce, identify, how long is that ingredients list? Why do they need so many things in there? If you think what would I need if I made this item from scratch? And then you're questioning what else and why are they adding all of these other things? And another great thing is, how long would that item last on the side of your counter for? And if we're
3
talking,
days apparently, right? If anything is lasting,
if it's fresh, it should be 3 days, absolutely.
3 days.
But even breads, cakes, anything that you can buy that is sitting there for weeks, that is you're questioning what is in this.
They're selling brown bread here. I did mention that. I sent a tweet to them that they were selling brown bread. It had syrup in it. I'm eating it this is supposed to be brown bread. Why does this taste like cake a little bit? And then I checked it. It was just one line syrup. Why would you put syrup in bread?
Yeah.
So
It's like all these drinks as well that you see, and like the syrups that get added to drinks. And it's, from a calorie standpoint, never mind anything else, for people that are on a weight loss journey, beverages are a real.
no, they're not. They're setting kids up for failure, because when you see a notification come from the school, it says, yeah, please don't bring snacks with nuts, but it's fine to bring snacks with added sugars.
Exactly,
And it's all 90% sugary stuff. That's like the most horrible thing you can think of. And I mean, if the kids don't, first of all, you're taking away all the choices. They don't even know what's going on. They're consuming them. And I just, yesterday on the Mind Pump podcast, I heard that it takes 30 days for the brain to dewire itself. The toxic stuff is gone, but the brain is used to the sugar, not sugary, the processed food intensity, which is triggering your neurosynapses, so that no food, like regular food, cannot compete with that quality of triggers. It takes 30 days to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's like an addictive thing, right?
And then the thing you mentioned about the information floating around that on the Johnny DeFranco podcast yesterday, it was like how people are sold these things which are like, just for marketing reasons. That now the noise level is increasing in the fitness media information space, that what's really correct anymore.
Yeah, exactly. How do you know what's right? I have many years of education and I still find it challenging. So I just think, when that's not your profession, how do you stand a chance? Just going to what you said on the gut, the brain thing there, and I think people underestimate the importance of looking after your gut and your brain health as well.
Let's do that. Let's talk about that in your closing thoughts, Sophie. That what is your to protect your gut health? What's the baseline we can do for that?
Well, when we're thinking gut health, we're thinking, of course, directly the health of your digestive system, but we must also think mood, immunity, your brain health generally, your skin. Like your gut is really at the core of so many conditions. I see so many clients that think that they have certain issues, and I look back at their health history and we do a real deep dive and investigation, and it's your gut health, because there are so many things we've discussed that are out there to really wreak havoc on your gut.
And how long does it take to fix that?
Well, it very much depends on the person and how long they've been doing whatever they've been doing. But, I always say you need at least 3 months really to notice significant change. But our gut has, a lining within it. And we have this concept that's becoming a thing called intestinal hyperpermeability. And it's a bit of a mouthful, but leaky gut is sometimes how people have heard of it. And we want that gut barrier to remain really kind of tight. But what happens is when we introduce these, sugary foods or even lots of stress or medications, that gut barrier becomes really kind of permeable and it gets these little gaps in it. And that means that foods that really shouldn't have entered into our body and into our blood, because we should have had that lining really intact, all of a sudden do. And our body reacts because they're foreign ingredients in our body that, are not supposed to be there. So we get this immune response, and that can present itself in so many ways. I see it with people with eczema or with acne or with brain fog, fatigue, joint pain. It can really, present in so many different ways. So the gut is literally, I know, at the core, which sounds like a bit of a pun, but it is at the core of everything that people are doing. And unfortunately, so many things are damaging it these days. There was a fantastic trial that was done in about 2017, and they looked at people that had psychological distress or depression, I think it was, and they either gave them some social support or they gave them a Mediterranean diet. And the Mediterranean diet is characterized by anti-inflammatory products, basically everything that we're doing to reduce inflammation in the body. And the people who were on the anti-inflammatory diet had such more positive impacts from that than the people that were receiving the psychological support. So that gut-brain connection is undeniable. It's absolutely there. So I think for people in business, when we're, these afternoon slumps, people have these problems that they shouldn't need to be dealing with. There's something going on wrong there. You shouldn't have symptoms every day that are troublesome. Let's look at what is the root cause, what is going on, and often that starts in your gut. So a couple of things you can do to look after your gut health. Everyone's heard the probiotic and the prebiotic terms, I'm sure, but Probiotics are basically when we're adding into our gut bacteria, but good bacteria. We have good and bad levels. It's all about that harmony of them being in equal amounts. But probiotic foods are foods rich in that good bacteria. So we're looking at our fermented foods a lot of the time. Yogurts with cultures in them,
Sauerkraut, kimchi,
kefir, kombucha.
kimchi.
I always see, yeah, exactly those types
Is it
of
available
things.
easily?
Yeah, so you can
Cheaply?
also make it if you want to go down that route pretty easily. But there are kombucha is expensive. I think kimchi, I see in a lot of places. The more kind of the less fancy brands are the cheaper options, and they're usually
Can it be
pretty
regular
available.
pickles?
Pickled food is good. Anything that has that kind of acidity in it. And then we've got our prebiotics, which are the foods that we need to fuel the existing bacteria in our gut. So we're talking really accessible vegetables, fruits, apples, asparagus, artichokes, pears, things that we can actually get pretty easily in our diet. So we can do a lot. Please don't just go and start taking a probiotic and prebiotic supplement or a gut health supplement that you've seen online, because I also say to people, how do you know that what's in that supplement is actually what your body needs in that probiotic? Because we have millions of different bacteria in our gut. You're then taking a supplement that might not be replenishing the ones that you don't have enough of. And it might be giving you more of what you've already got. So there is a place for probiotic supplementation, often in certain conditions, or if you've received antibiotic treatment for anything. But on a day-to-day, these should not be part of our don't waste your money. You may as well be getting that through your good foods and reducing the intake of those artificial sugars, those sweeteners, those ingredients that we don't know how to pronounce, because they're going to really impact that gut barrier that I mentioned before, and they're going to poke holes in that barrier. So we've lost that integrity and that barrier and that defense. And then all these harmful substances that our body doesn't really know how to deal with all of a sudden are in our body and causing all sorts of symptoms.
Let's dive back this to all, basically good health is good business. If an employer doesn't want their employee to get sick, they should have healthy snacks. They should promote healthy snacks, which will reduce their insurance premiums.
Absolutely.
And on a company level, and for someone who's paying for the insurance themselves, of course, it'll protect them as well. Plus, it'll protect them more importantly from lifelong suffering, daily suffering. And I believe the suffering is quite immediate. It's not that it's going to come at a later stage. So that's good business. The economic cost is, I think, pretty high. Just because you don't see it, that doesn't mean it's not happening, and people are paying it every day. Either it could be a road accident happening because you were having brain fog, you were tired, your eyes were tired, you were like for a moment you dozed off. And I used to do night shifts. I know how bad it gets. Like, in the morning, how whatever you eat, you feel like you're getting sick or something. Even if it's a banana, like, your body's just rejecting it because you're supposed to be sleeping at that time, or waking up rather, and you're forcing yourself to sleep.
Yeah.
Things like that. And it's about time that people, employers, the government, everyone needs to understand that it's an underlying major health issue which is costing everyone on all different levels of the economy. And it's just because, and sick leaves coming up, and then the employees under stress, and people don't understand that, why are you don't have a fever, but you're taking a sick day. Because this kind of cultural divide is there, like, just because you're not sick today doesn't mean you won't be sick tomorrow. So this is why we are raising this point on a business channel. And I think it's thank you for coming.
No problem.
And Sophie, where can we find you online? What are your socials, website? What do you?
So I do have a website and a social. My channel is more niche for people struggling with any kind of hormonal problems, mostly for women of reproductive age. So I'm called the Nutri PT, and UTRIPT. That is my Instagram and my website. But my website has the ability to kind of, see what I do from all the other aspects of health rather than just females of reproductive age.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for listening and watching. And please do follow us on our socials. We just became active on LinkedIn. And of course, you can follow us on YouTube and Rumble. This is Muzammil from Mira Business FM signing off.